So what a beautiful day here in the city of Detroit. Beautiful day? Thank you. Yes, it is. Mr. Christos Mosades, I hope I got your name right, who owns this beautiful facility. I just want to thank you, and let's give him a round of applause. Now, this is what contingency planning looks like. This is exactly what it looks like, leading from the front and making decisions. So as we get started, if I could ask you to repeat along with me our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance, flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Aren't those beautiful words? Yes, they are. Important words. Words that should inspire every Michigander and every American. Liberty and justice for all. These words, they carry new meaning as we watch career politicians in Washington and Lansing disappoint us time and time again. Liberty from an overbearing, out-of-control government, justice for those suffering in communities ignored by career politicians. Here we are. We were on beautiful Belle Isle, but we're in a much better place with a beautiful view of the city of Detroit in the great state of Michigan. Michigan, in so many ways, is the birthplace of the American middle class and the modern American dream. It's also the arsenal of democracy and home to some of the greatest cultural influences of our time. Michigan is the birthplace of the idea that people from modest beginnings can earn their way to a good standard of living through hard work. Working hard used to grant freedom. It led to buying a home, owning a car, having enough money to comfortably raise a family and enjoy some downtime on the weekends. Unfortunately, this promise, the American dream, seems so unattainable to so many today, and that's the problem. And we have a leadership vacuum that only serves to feed the problem. I say, no more. Repeat after me, no more.
No more!
Yes, we all must continue to say no more. As I have traveled through my hometown of Detroit, I began to reflect on the early days of my journey that led me to where I am today. I visited the house where I grew up, where so much of what makes me the man I am today originated with my father, a veteran of the U.S. Army, taught me the value of hard work and how to fight for freedom. I visited my school, Cass Technical High, where I received a good education and the discipline I needed to succeed. I visited Stellantis, formerly FCA, automobile manufacturer, then Chrysler. My first job, I would say within days of my graduation from high school. Then I stopped by the 10th precinct of the Detroit Police Department, where I first began my career as a young officer. I learned so much in those early days. And then I visited American Coney Island. We all know it, an iconic eatery represents the great city of Detroit. And my trip across the city wasn't some token visit. I served as chief of police to the city of Detroit for the past 8 years. I know this town, its streets, its people. I grew up here, started my career here, and now I'm back to serve yet again. Then I worked in other cities across America, in 3 where I was blessed to have served as police chief. I gained a greater perspective, and when I returned home to Detroit to lead the department, it was important as a servant leader to build trust with those I served with and to build trust with those in our community. You know, as a police officer, you see people in moments of great joy, but you sometimes see people at their lowest. I've been in rooms with all sorts of people. community leaders, business leaders, yes, activists, and politicians. You learn a lot about people, problem solving, and why it's always important to do the right thing and lead from the front. And yes, I led from the front. I never asked an officer or a member of my department to do something I myself wouldn't do. All of those experiences shaped me into the man I am today. Yes, I am a political outsider, but I am a proven leader who refuses to be boxed in by the color of my skin or partisan affiliation. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I did grow up a Democrat in a town where that's all we were exposed to. I was just simply expected to follow suit and take on the values of those who looked like me. It was a different time, a different era. And through my life experiences, I evolved. I had a firsthand experience with what we once referred to as radical elements of the Democratic Party, but now seem to be accepted as part of the mainstream platform. And I know you're going to ask who that was. Have we ever heard of Maxine Waters in California? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And that was in 1992. I came to understand the importance of protecting the right of an individual to protect their family with a gun. I couldn't be part of a party that wanted to infringe on this basic right. I understand the importance of relying on oneself to get a good education and giving parents more options for their children. I understand the importance of relying on oneself to gain employment and to build a career to raise a family. It became clear to me that today's Democrat Party became reliant on a victimhood mentality and a culture of dependency. That does not comport with my values. The inconsistent, incompetent response to the pandemic by so many politicians just further highlights the need for new leadership. Governor Whitmer and so many others are in a position of influence. Yes, I use the term position of influence instead of leader deliberately. Let me say it again. A position of influence. We will all agree with that. Thank you. Because many of the supposed leaders of today simply do not lead. So much of Michigan is struggling. Small businesses have been shut down and can't find employees. Not because of the pandemic, but because of the failed response to the pandemic. Our school children lost at least a year of proper education, could not participate in sports, and continue to face unwieldy, confusing mandates from Lansing. Not because of the pandemic, but because of the failed response to the pandemic. We're a potential situation inside nursing homes where countless parents and grandparents may have died, not because of the pandemic, but because of failed response to the pandemic. Law enforcement became the focus of intense attacks and a false narrative promoted by the far left and some in the middle, and some in the media. Drug and alcohol abuse are on the rise. Depression is up, and a record number of people think we're on the wrong track. And our governor has been more focused on political science rather than actual science from the beginning. Thank you. The damn roads are not fixed, unless someone here can tell me different. We've seen countless infrastructure disasters, including almost nonstop flooding across southeast Michigan. We all know about what DTE said. There was no coordination between MDOT and GLEWA. No coordination. Leaders solve problems. Leaders sit down and discuss the issues. How easy would it have been? We know every time it rains in southeast Michigan, there's going to be a power outage. There's something called generators. Let's plug the generators. How many cars were lost by our residents because of that lack of leading from the front? We need a leader who leads from the front. We need a leader to support small business. A leader who creates an environment that allows jobs to flourish and adequately incentivizes those in the workforce and encourages others to join. We need a leader who will protect our children and their education. A leader who empowers parents. I'll say it again, empowers parents. They are the stakeholders. And ensure all students have access to a quality of education. We need a leader who will implement policies that protect the most vulnerable from COVID-19, but doesn't destroy the lives and livelihoods of so many. We need a leader who will defend law enforcement, not defund them. Not defund them. And let's be reminded, Governor Whitmer in 2020 made the statement that she embraced the spirit of defunding the police. What does that mean? Embrace the spirit of defunding the police. We need a leader who will give our people a hand up, not a handout. A leader who will lead Michigan to a better future. We all know that many politicians are all talk and no action. We are about action. We've already started working with law enforcement across the state and our legislature on an effort called LEADS, which stands for Law Enforcement Action Driving Success, to pass new funding and laws to strengthen law enforcement. We'll work with educators and parents through our Learn initiative that's still under development, which stands for Leading Education Reform Now, to improve educational opportunities for our children. I became a public servant more than 4 decades ago, right here in the streets of Detroit. Yes, at times it was tough. There was a lot going on, even going as far back to the 60s, we know. But we still have tough times today. But we are Michiganders. We've seen tough times before, but we will persevere once again by protecting liberty, by implementing justice, and yes, by leading from the front. My name is James Craig, and I'm running to be your governor, the governor for the state of Michigan. The governor for the state of Michigan. In closing, I just say God bless each and every one of you. God bless our troops. God bless our police officers. God bless the United States. And God bless Michigan. Thank you. Thank you. The message is, I'm winning. I got the message out anyway. I'm winning. And you know what's sad about today and disappointing? That small group of paid protesters, I'll say it again, small group of paid protesters did nothing. What they did is reinforce why we need change. We need bold, strong leadership to stand up. That shouldn't have happened. I know that group. I was around that group all last year. And yes. And guess what? I know who they are. They know I know who they are. And they do not speak for most Detroiters. They just don't. They don't speak for Detroiters in vulnerable neighborhoods. They want to defund the police. So we're winning.
Mr. Craig, can you put to rest your position in regard to the election and election integrity? Did President Biden win a free and fair election in your estimation?
First of all, I've not seen an investigation that shows that the election was fraud, although I will say that there are many Michiganders, many across our country, that feel there were problems. And we should listen to those folks. I know in the great state of Arizona, they're doing a forensic audit. Let's see what that audit shows us. But I do believe in election integrity for all, Democrats and Republicans, and I think it's very appropriate that when you go to a poll, you should show ID. In fact, when I recently voted, thank you. I recently, the last election here in the city of Detroit, the first thing that happened to me when I walked through the doors, they said, "We know who you are. You're Chief Craig. I need to see your ID." And I thanked them for it. That's not a lot to ask for. And that's certainly not voter suppression.
But from where you sit today, do you believe the election was fair?
I just answered the question.
I'm not sure what you
And
answered.
well, what I said is, I haven't seen an investigation that said the election was stolen. I know that there have been a number of lawsuits filed, rejected by the courts, but I do agree with many Michiganders who have concerns. And so one way to reduce the concern, because we believe in the integrity of elections for both Republicans and Democrats, yes, we should have ID
You'll
shown.
be running in the August primary. Do you believe that that election will be full of integrity?
I'm optimistic, praying, and confident that it will be. I know many will be watching, and as they should be. Thank you.
Chief Craig, what do you have to say to the Detroiters? What do you have to say to the Detroiters here and minorities who may not support you right now?
I got to tell you something. Over the weeks of listening, I believe more Detroiters support me than many know. Let me tell you why. I was branded here in Detroit. I served 8 years as a police chief, and by all accounts, the community was happy, supportive, and you know why? Because they believed in the leadership, they certainly believed in transparency, and they knew I would support the men and women who serve, but I would also hold the men and women who violate the law or breach our oath of office accountable. That's what they know about this chief. That's what I bring to the state of Michigan. So to your question, I think there are going to be a lot of surprises here in the city of Detroit. They know I love this city, I was born in this city, and I still live in this city. I'm a Detroiter.
Chief Craig, now Detroit.
I don't know, but I gotta believe. I feel good about it. I feel like they were paid. I feel like they were paid. I don't have any hard evidence, but I feel like they were paid. I don't have any hard, admittedly I don't. I think last year, candidly, when we saw what was going around our country, 2020, that was a coordinated or orchestrated effort to undermine local governments across our nation. I saw it. I was relentless in watching what was going on. So if you think that I could sit here and this was just done in a vacuum, no, I believe they were paid. I absolutely believe that. Do I have hard evidence? I've never conducted an investigation, but I gotta tell you, I just wish someone would take a hard look at how this could happen in our America today. How this could happen. I don't know.
If you referenced the infrastructure in your speech, what is your plan for improving infrastructure, fixing roads?
Well, one, I didn't say that's one of my priorities. However, I do think our roads do need to be fixed. But when I look at the travesty of cars being submerged and destroyed here in Southeast Michigan, and I kept wondering, now, I'm not an expert, but I do know that if you lose electricity and you have a critical function, I know hospitals have what? Generators. Do we think our flooding freeways, that issue needs to be addressed? I rely on the experts from DTE. The DTE experts said it best. Where's the coordination between MDOT and Great Lakes Water Authority? No coordination. That's shameful. You have to lead from the front.
Now, Chief,
Yeah.
so you were saying that the protesters don't speak for all of Detroit.
Absolutely
now,
not.
This is a statewide race, though, and a lot of, especially Republican voters in rural areas, don't like being told what to do by big city politicians and whatnot. So how do you connect with them statewide to get your message across?
I'm a blue collar guy. I'm from the ground. I'm not special. I didn't grow up with a gold spoon in my mouth. I'm not financing this campaign. I'm no different than anybody else in this state. I will resonate with those folks up north or on the west because I'm authentic, I'm a leader, and I'm blue collar. I know what hard work looks like. Nobody's ever given me anything. This is why I'm so, I talk to young people and have throughout my time, and I just stress to them, you can accomplish and do whatever you want in life. I was told I would never be a chief of police, but yet as I stand here today, I was the chief of police in 3 cities. If someone wants to tell me that I would not be the governor of the state of Michigan, I say different. It's a calling. Thank you for the question.
Chief, you said that parents are facing confusing mandates for schools from Lansing. There hasn't been a statewide mandate on schools since June. Can you clarify what you're talking about and how schools should address the pandemic?
Well, we can talk about it. Follow the science. the real science, not political. That's the problem. And let's let parents choose. If a parent wants to send their child to school and don a mask, so be it. If the parent feels that, well, you know what, I really don't want my son or daughter in school if they're unvaccinated children, and you want to homeschool, choice. If you don't want to get vaccinated, I mean, what are we becoming? Making mandates? Making mandates to get vaccinated? Are we becoming socialists? Communists? What about choice? Look, thank you. Look, let me finish. I'm a COVID survivor. I got the vaccine twice. There's so much conflicting information coming out of Washington from the so-called scientists. One minute wear the mask, another minute don't. You get vaccinated, you're okay. Now you're saying we got to get a booster because the first 2 shots are not going to work. And then what about natural immunity? Look, I'm not a scientist, but see, one thing I would do very different, instead of slamming businesses with unilateral decisions, how about we sit down, understand the science, and talk to people? That's called leading from the front. Let me just say this. Thank you.
I know.
Listen to small business. When I first arrived here in Detroit as a chief, I met with people that didn't like the police department. Local activists did not trust. A number of community members that did not trust. But I knew one thing I needed to do, knowing that we may not always agree, but we needed to get in a room and work together on those things that we both believe in. And guess what? We did that. And evidence of it and how it worked so effectively, when 2020 happened, there's a reason why Detroit, a city that everybody expected there was going to be looting, burning, and rioting, and it didn't happen for a couple of reasons. We had relationships with people who weren't always our friends. Those folks went down to deal with those who were focused on one thing, igniting the fire. I saw it firsthand, but also leadership. I was on the ground, and the protesters knew, and we certainly supported the weeks and days of mostly peaceful protesting, but we also know there were days that our officers were attacked, police cars were damaged, and we needed to address that. What we saw in LA, what we saw in Chicago, all these other cities, wasn't going to happen in Detroit. And we weren't never going to retreat. Like many cities where you saw images of looting and burning and no presence of law enforcement. That didn't happen here. Thank you. That's right.
Chief, the Democratic Party for some time has supported reform police movements. In recent weeks, Governor Whitmer announced support for more financial support for law enforcement and criminal justice system. Would that be something you could support? What's your reaction?
You know, I find it kind of comical. You got to be able to peel back the layers. Let me tell you what's underneath that layer. First of all, supporting the hiring of police officers is great. I would never stand in the way of that. What do you want them doing? We got a violent crime issue across this country. So let's peel back the layer for a minute. Okay, moderate Democrats are moving off of the defund the police verbally. As I said earlier in my remarks, the governor stated what? That she supported the spirit. What did she say about ending qualified immunity? Let me tell you what ending qualified immunity is. That's defund the police. This is something that the Democrats are pushing through the legislature. I have met with those Democrats prior to retiring from the Detroit Police Department. I said, that's a deal breaker for me. We know what's really going on. And let's talk about being complicit. If a radical faction of your party is talking about dismantling, reimagining, and I'm not saying that there's not need for reform. I'm not suggesting that. However, what about the morale of the men and women who serve? How do we hope to hire? Do you know there's a hiring problem today? Because candidly, many who are on the front line serving don't feel supported. I'm not talking about Detroit police officers. I was very fortunate. They knew this chief would stand up and support the men and women. And I did that. But I also know, and I know you know this, because I've also held those accountable who crossed the line. That doesn't represent the vast majority of the men and women. I'll take one more question.
Is law enforcement your top issue that's centering your campaign? And have you seen any polling that indicates what's the top issue Michiganders are looking for in a campaign?
That's a great question. I would say that it's not a top of my campaign. In fact, I talk a lot about law enforcement because I spent 44 years, but I don't want you to feel like I'm in a little box and that's all I know. What I do know, leadership works. And those things, my experience for all these years, even dating back to Los Angeles, prepares me as a CEO of the state. Because when you talk about leadership, it ties in. You hear folks talk about, well, I want to unify. Well, how are you going to unify when you're not talking to the other party? You don't have a relationship with the other party. That's not unification. Look, we know there are things that we can agree on and things that we won't agree on. How about small businesses? That's a big deal. They don't feel supported. As I've made my travels, I certainly won't name the name of the business. And this is the one thing that stood out for me. Pretty good sized business, another part of the state. I was talking to the owners. They were perplexed. They were angry and troubled. They spent a 30-minute Zoom call with the governor. And in that call, the owners brought up the issue of labor, the shortage of labor, and how her policies are creating this vacuum. They brought it up. She rejected it and just said they need help. And all that owner, the group of owners told me, that 30 minutes we will never get back. Leading means sitting down with people and having meaningful conversations. This is not a dictatorship. So on that note, I will close. I thank you for your patience today. Certainly what happened today, yes, we're still winning. We still got our message out. And we're going to continue to get our message out across the great state of Michigan. Thank you very much.